된죠. 천하의 모든 일들을 소화도 신들을 쇼 반대되는 말하시. 다계적으로 변대되 전에 가르쳐 배우는 지선들이 구성도 지금도 되도 소 다 나도 들이 이제 뒤에 살하고 거기 진다로 네 로디게 진다 당보를 했으니 나도 양자 예 다리 믹스에 로존 천적 콜을 돌아니 롭젠 토트 토에레스 아니 담나도 양자 예 투네 인데 셰어 그거 돌링 지기 중화데 네 겨우상부레스 인데 음 대단히 참리에 선물을
Today, this is the first in the year's class of the Wednesday series of classes to do with wheel weapon mind training. It is a wonderful opportunity to expound here and listen to it. So welcome to everyone in that regard.
다데 무조디레 무조디 추조디다 APMD 서로 티진진 용서고 너로 차대레는 저 미세 베이직 프로그램 세 마스터 프로그램 세인데 여러 다데 베이직 프로그램게 롭젠직 차기 요레스로 니 야지랑조 사자 데라냐 추조 데데 더블 점블링 신다게 추조 신다라 롭젠이네 찍고 차고 오래 니 다리당은 코로니와 하나마치 티자라 연자다 코로니와 대전이와 잡용고래스로
So this center is affiliated with FPMT, Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition. And within that, preserving that Mahayana tradition, there is a basic program and a master's program. This fulfills the former of the text laid out there. And you might have studied this at another center. And here, this teaching has already been given.
One second.
This is the second.
제가 디 양지랑서 가시 당요마직 클라사레 다데데 양자양자선 오늘이나 단도 롭젠디도다 니마 따과 수수 메제나라 비주 연구인 야레스로 롭젠 찍이 롭존 찍체 샤샤든게 말해고 니 메제코랑 베 마시사고 롭존디 니케레 먼저디 직 레가세나 이제 아카데미도 이렇게 말해서 심기 아니 동에세다다 심기 디지두다는 게 마선자 아니 마시사고 심기 동에세 디지두고라서 제사고 마시사고 페이지 제도에서 페이지에 통다들어.
And those of it studied it before might have the attitude, oh, well, I've studied that. But in reality, this is something one should endeavor to apply every day, not just to study it and leave it as a kind of, as you would a piece of work or academia, but rather to keep the study as one's foundation as one goes through life, because really this is dealing with reducing mental suffering and cultivating mental peace. So, how far have we got in that?
나도 간 이야기 최디 태고침에 최선다 아니요 코추 이베침에 최에 있는 지금 꿀론디 아니 야고시켜고 인상도 당고 꿀론 아니 고음직 야고스로.
Now the Dharma we are listening to is the vast vehicle of the Mahayana. It's not enough that the Dharma be great vehicle, our attitudes should be in line with that. Our attitudes should be vast, so therefore we have to correct our intention.
탁군론디 니마 드리네 제르와 나랑게 류당아 셈 디즈 상마게니 밀라 펜도여바당 이제 선보 상보지 돈에 나라 메제디 전단데바 메제 전단데바 시기게 있으러 디인자 디제라 메제 전단데바 제라 아니 밀라 펜도체와 동벌로 펜도체 수준능 밀라 펜도체로 튼도 셈제들이라 펜도체는 지tum나 메제데 전단데바 전다 연결차레스 전단된서 전세 신지 전디 전로하고 신의 펜도시는 전다 지기요라 디 밀라 신라 펜도 제발라 당고 수수 셈디 지와 거래 수수 셈 툭딘 줘도 좀 매워서고 요래 셈 마시버도 매워서고 요래 셈 마지버도 매워서고 요래 근데 디네 수수 셈바 시바당 대워당 야고 셈바 누버도 템버 서고 인자 근데 래서야 지되는 로젠디 니마드리네 시제 야고지 녀로 아니 상당 초앙어는 케토가 지금 300원에 꿀롱 신변지 꿀롱 야고 직접 왔어.
One's motivation should be that one's actions now of body, speech, and mind will then be beneficial. And how is that in the context of this life being kind to others in terms of fulfilling the meaning or purpose, making life meaningful? So to benefit one's country, to benefit the people surrounding you, to benefit animals, all of that is fulfilling the purpose of those beings and to make life meaningful for them. But to do that, first of all, one has to make one's own mind serviceable, to not have like a mistaken mind that hallucinates, but to subdue one's own mind, to pacify it so that it is peaceful, blissful, and potent. So please listen to the class with that motivation.
다 아니 가고 검로 하다 가는서 드링 가는서 니마 디나라야 된대게 최자 전부지 아니 닌지 중앙에 겨우상고 그거 야고 이 전제 가고 공부를 해서 단다로
Rejoicing that today, this day, we have met with such teaching of precious Dharma. Fortunate at having that good opportunity. Rejoice in that.
다단다 디 로전 천재 콜로 대부 챔비 로전 천재 콜인데 최대 중림라고 저와 중림라고 시에이나 아니 저다 로전세디 남부산지에 최탐제 로전래가
Yeah.
남부산지에 최탐제 로라디 셈라와 종세다 심종야로 그래서 남부산지에 최탐제 아니 로전 로전 레데레스로
Yeah. Now, in the context of this text, the wheel weapon mind training, which is, as we said, a vast vehicle text of the Mahayana. What's the source of it? What do we mean by mind training? Actually, all of Buddha's teaching, all of Buddha Dharma is lojong, which means to transform or train the mind.
제가 나이나야 단다딜라 믹스에게 로종 시 민다도 람림도 로종 시그멘도 왔어요.
Yeah.
그디 용다 그다 믹스에 내라 셈 먼저 지난 람림 상 로종다래와 이나야 타고 값스파에 양치 슝진 제라고 가실라 로종 시계세로
Yeah.
천적 콜로세로도 민 믹스 카드 아니 다야디 배전 벽에 라마다 지 가담 계시 진내 민다야디 타니에디 중이세요 말로종 믹스에 냠네 다시 냠지 지기 요스로와 지 란진지 로도즈 메소고 요스인데 로종 냠네 믹스에다 슝 데젠 지 쳐다봐지라 야 로종세 민다제네 민마지 펄 야갈 대고나 로종세 지기 슈 지난 남배 최던지 로종들에들래 민 로스 세월어지 메든저로지 비주 지기에서 말해
Yeah, not use. Yeah.
아니
That would do.
펄라 텐데 총된 교지래도
Now, of course, we have this term mind training, especially, but actually, there's like the Lam Rim, the graduated stages on the path to enlightenment, and also mind training. Well, actually, Lam Rim you could also say is a mind training, but in terms of conventional, in a kind of common sense, especially when we refer to texts such as the 8 verses of thought transformation and this text, wheel weapon mind training, we're talking about the convention, the label that's given to the training, for example, of equalizing and exchanging self for others, vanquishing and removing self-cherishing or self-interest. And it's probably a convention that came through Tibet, from the Kadampa Geshis, where this phrase was coined, particularly for these types of texts where you train your mind in that regard. In India, of course, they had the Buddha Dharma in its entirety, but this phrase, mind training, was not used like this.
제가 단다 먼저 로종 천적 콜로세 네 조지 반데 아디샤게 라마 네 다마르시다스 되게 주 남겨래도 알아 난다 낭베기 다 팅상게 배제도 다 하고 말해 팅상 탭딘데 몽티도
야
그래서 그런 셈기 냠뇽 진족해 말해 그 초직 진조로 페네직도 데네직도 제수 디샤요래 그래도 다 배제도도 이나 좀뭐 뭐 그런 셈나라야 네 똑바다 냠뇽다 아니 도저 여지죠 도저마 추구간의 지원인자 이 믹스에게 다가요 말이로
Now, this is a text that was composed by Dhammarakshita, who was a teacher of a Tisha, in that context of the way Buddha Dharma is set forth in that textual manner. These days, however, when texts are put together, often it is just kind of an assimilation of different things that the author puts together, not necessarily the mind's experience or insights, which sets these types of texts apart, and that they're coming from the realizations and experience of the masters that composed them.
lama tamarashidagi choj pande adishalna choj pande adisha phel phera
Yeah.
phel phene da phel nangbe chede thura dumba tawani gozu dumba kewa wa juwa da dinando ne nalenda ge da kewa mo fa demri shya da ni choj pande adisha thura kadina to mendora
chupa mendo
주지린 주다 주바주지 예면 도래 다 리참도 조지다 도 페라 조지네 조지 로마 롬데발나 안데네마 가당 비지 고도
샤라와 치부바
어두저 네 차차단 말라고 말어 이네마 주바디제데 가담발나 두스 주바디 추모레스 펠라.
But then if we look at the master Atisha who brought Buddha Dharma to Tibet, and the spreading of this Buddha Dharma, 7th, 8th, 10th centuries. As if we look at the Nalanda tradition, it was kind of around about that time, but during which period did Atisha go to Tibet? Probably 10th or 11th centuries. Anyway, if we look at the lineage as it spread from within Tibet, it is going down through the Kadampa masters. So from Atisha, from Tompa, Potawa, Sharawa, Chekawa, and so forth. We don't need to mention them all, but this is the lineage.
아드네마 제 다디 인주시 도스제 당다사고 당다 자오군은 주시버서 오면 저기 라마 주바디제 봐 요래 주바디제 요래.
Yeah, so now if we look at that herd lineage, or the transmission of the lineage, it's unbroken to this day, right up into His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
예, 디 자오름세니 뭐좀 천적홀로디 당다디 다직 다마디 순주 아마 고주 거직래 바람살라.
I had this teaching of the text and its commentary from His Holiness in Dharamsala in 1991.
그래서 이 이제 되게 농주 티준이 하대선도 배다 깨워 상보라 먼저.
Yeah. So what we're fortunate to meet is the transmission existing in its entirety to this time.
들어 주어 죽지 나게 미기 지신적 럽정 탭도 단단 먼저 럽정 지에 요와 디가 마 주어디 요와 디 배다 야고 쉬지라로.
Yeah, thinking that someone composed this 10th or 11th century and that study and transmission lineage is existing in this day, it is fortunate. That's an essential recapping of the source and transmission of the text. However, what's the benefit of studying such a text?
다 펜도디 지 내가 브로랑서 지 남과 매나야 로종기 고두즈 장베이나 펜도여레 나 단다 들은 유시자진 나래야 아니 나란도 심기 강이 숙청부 쇼레더로
야
그런서 단다 카셰라 강이 요든데 유지래로 심 강이 언미 만차라 강이데 연구를 가르잖아 심데 다두게 디지도야게 탑랑게 랑가딜라 누구요 말하는 modern education 알라니 심게 강의 세단다 심지 디지털다 심고 그런 요 말하다 제로래로 심지 디지털다 제로래다 간다 아니 낭미니 남이 요 말해로 카요 말다 저는 좀 먹어질라 심지 동예 세단다 심지 디지털다데 다 매번 인자 파워드 동의되니 요래 생각하더니 로 말아서 심마지오 온게 투데버다 딩자 슝거란 게 생기 안에서 돈달라 배샤 먹었던 거로 배샤 담아지고 펜토고요 말아봐들라 차시직 다직 랑가 딱다지고 그요로 아니 답직 제가도 지고래 이나에 된다 랑가디 배 탑람데 따다지 리고요 말이로 강에디 철철면 쉬지 중 누구요 말해. 세상 단대 뒤주들라 배데 로종게 고도 잠바이나 심기 강에세라 다 펜도 할 레버다 추 낭바 매나디기요라 낭바 매나에 다 로종데 제샤비나 그래서 매제매제 심 강에세라 펜도 할 레버다 매나 와
The case is that whether one is a Buddhist or not, in fact, if one is not a Buddhist, the benefits for studying this type of text are great. In context of the 21st century, it is the case that mentally we go through difficulties and problems. We have them. I think some of you might have mental problems. Yeah, no, I didn't mean to come out like that. Anyway, so therefore, the mind doesn't seem to go to final bliss, does it? To a state of final well-being. And it seems that modern education does not produce the cause of the result of that final well-being. It's not met. In education, what is not met is final bliss and alleviation of suffering. We don't seem to get it from our families, the mind's bliss and the removal of suffering either. However, somehow suffering is there. We have problems and dissatisfactions, and the government puts a lot of finance to that end. Yeah, like how are they going to solve the suffering of peoples? But somehow that comes up short too. There seems to be not enough, and or the method doesn't fit. The method doesn't fit people. So we need a method that is good. And countries put so much finance into that, finding that method, but oftentimes it doesn't fit or doesn't work, and it ends up a bit of time wasting. So therefore, I think in terms of how the mind can be benefited from this type of study, you don't need to be a Buddhist, but this is like medicine, actually, in the context of this life. These teachings are like medicine.
아니, 나도 되네. 야지. 지도 나라지. 저와 미담이 바로 저와 체야래. 니지 자 챌린지 망고지 이도 동네 시다래. 다 계시셔야지. 지 콘도레 차도레 되자레 마제레 텐셈레 다 텐저레 컴피티션레 텐데 온게 아니 데다 망고지 강에 윤대게 여러 어두주세게 탑람 두두다 믹스에게 네 뭔지 콘도단 되자단 다 디주기 짜워 그런 매우서다리 바다 텐데 시에는데 배 오늘 가서 그래 편연라 할래버다 편연라 이제 내가 비 지금 님은 생각이 강했어요. 그러면 매너 매 진도 모델을 다 메디슨도 차대 따로.
It is the case that in society we have to connect with others, and we meet challenges. When we connect with others, interact with them, we have to bear or take on or bear things, be forbearing. That can be situations which there's anger, jealousy, competitiveness. We face these difficulties. So these trainings are ways to remove or deal with such things. A method to remove anger and so forth at the root. So there's great benefit. This is like a medicine for the mind.
다들 아니 소소 낭바치야게 되와 유니는 아니 낭바치니는 타바 먼저 동해 도구면도 나는 동해들에 타베 타발라지 요레스 셰기요라 제자한테 양때 동해도 다 동해도 뇽제 대거베스나 동해도 뇽제 대고 말해 딜레 제베 타바사지 요레스다 산제 좀인데 소저다 근데 로존 지 베제디나네 먼저 단다 동해 뇽데 뇽신데 대고야 말해 딜레 타베 타발라지 요레스
Now, from the context, if you are a Buddhist practitioner, then aspiring to the state of liberation, recognizing that, well, if you don't like the state of going through problems, difficulties, and suffering, do you always have to experience that state? Lord Buddha said, you do not. There is liberation from those states of suffering. And up to now, we've been experiencing that, but it doesn't always have to be that way.
야보다 디지 시에나로 저런서 난과면에 타바스니디 컨데지메 롭존치기나 타와 여바 시에니 아니 타와 되는 얘기나 다디 옹문노목이 타와 냠년치는 게 난과선제베 시에니 아니 라나 주기나 디페 템보여와 다디 나눠서 누조 미 야고실 롭존 지야라 거도와 지단 그 롭존 제베 지고 말해 삼노다로 김제 삼노다 다 타바스야지로 타바스 낭베 단당어서 니머니면 날라다 지 강연 망고지 태제 대구도 아다 강연들에 타베 타발라지 여르시기도 으스로 근데 요나 요단 칸데레도 안데 도야 그 탐랑 가래도 어디 두저 단단단디 죄제디나 셰고로 근데 열럽존 지기는 아다 디야 지면다시도 디 탐랑 치고도 슬레나 수수수수 오늘 지 랑가 양타고 지다 오늘 배 대화 오늘 튼튼이니 지차 차네 아니 수수를 된데 지 랑가라고 양타고 지 도tum나 아니 수수기 연연게 지 파마 빈자 토고 토모도 절라고 지기나 단 아니 매지 된다는데 뭐 어디리다 매지 되는데 뭐 차고 롭종한테 지기나 야구 지기나 매지 된다는데 뭐 차라 펜도 된대요 따로
Even if one is not a Buddhist, it is good to know of this state of liberation, nirvana. It's good to know of it. For the person that's intelligent and wants to make that possibility stable. I mean, as Westerners, often we have an academic approach which likes to study. If that's the case, then don't just study, but know the reasons and so forth. So day by day by day, there is this method whereby the suffering can be reduced and then ultimately removed, and then nirvana or liberation, as it is said, be obtained. So then the question is, if such a state of nirvana or liberation exists, how does it exist? What's its characteristics? What's the method to achieve that? And am I able to achieve it? So you set out through studying it with that in mind, and then you come to see that there is a valid path to that cessation of problems and their causes. And then that path is a final bliss. And if you start to work with that, then there's a context under which you can help those around you. You can help your relatives, your parents, your kindred, and so forth. This is what it, and studying like this is what it means to make human life meaningful. You say to them,
델라디네 아니지 배 한당 저는 산제라지 고다데 얘는 산제 구멍고 쇼다라 there's a condition 중요미데 네 싱그레서
a lot of you would have heard of Buddha, maybe, right? And then in this hall, you'll see lots of Buddha images. And then you think, how did they come to be? You know, what's the cause behind them?
그래서 니마지 등도 꾸든데 나시 수수 산제 차요 버디 신용도 아니 배다 레와 전부도 알아.
Yeah. So if you know what they stand for and what causes them, and then you have the thought, one day that will be me.
부모 얘네 따라서 부디 얘네.
Right. So for you, those of you that are female, you'll be in the aspect of Tara, and you blokes, you'll be Rajapanis.
부모 때 자고도서 타고제라.
So some of the women that are a bit fierce will be like this image of Tara up here.
부드서야. 시워도서 잠배한다 제레스도 타고도서야. 이 장로도지다 직제다들 여러러. 근데 쟤는 디그리스 거.
So the peaceful male varieties could be Manjushri and Chinrasic, and the more wrathful is Vagapani and Yamataka, and it goes.
네 롭전체나 아니 저 심지 탐제 산제교열라 디시나 대야고 쇼다로.
Yeah, no, in context of study, talking about all beings reaching Buddhahood, it's good to know how that is.
대 먼저라 이 홉도 스테이다라.
Yeah.
먼저 다 동의 녀제 다 녀제 대고 레면 님식 타야지 도스라.
Yeah.
나라 타고도 심지 신한테 타야지 도 제가 대 간래도 대 간래 연구에 메디 단다다 디나라게 지셔 연구로.
That's our one hope, isn't it? I mean, that from dissatisfaction, problems, and suffering, there is a liberated state. I will be liberated from it. All beings will be liberated from it. That's it.
그 직시한테 단다드마서나 다 전부 다 다른 거게 매제만 뭐 겨네 겨가 단다셔야데 근데 세대게 가서 뒤중 가서 개전부 쉬우지 돼야죠. 아니 네 단다 춘중을 하지라. 나 단다 춘중지는 게 전부 쉬우지 되거든. 되려면 들어.
Yeah. So in that context of oneself becoming awakened as a Buddha, one has to think in a broad way of many, many lifetimes, successive. And then it's useful because you reduce clinging to just this life and you realize what you've been clinging to as big, it's actually not so big.
하고도
Small.
상제의 누버디 먼저 밀류된라요. 미.
Yeah,
키당 망바당 지우도들 요 말해요.
yeah,
먼저 밀류된들라 된대기 남주기 셔럽지 요인다. 내가 자침부 치두고도 저당에 밀류된데 다시 머리상에 디 톨라당게 메스로 봐. 디 개침부리셔. 디 희양생한테 상무당고에 디 개침부리로 하면서
and in that context of obtaining to that goal of awakening of Buddhahood, the potential we have as humans is vast because we have a type of discriminating intelligence that, you know, cats and dogs don't have. It's much, you know, they cannot have those kind of they cannot accomplish vast amounts as we can with that goal in mind.
어디 내제도 밀류된디 된단된 바지 치고요나. 다 된단된 뭐 가르쳐 오래라도 된데라. 지 세대게 세 겨와디 지고 많이 봐. 겨와 치마라 편배 돈다지. 세대게 돈달을 하가. 겨와 치매 돈다지 아직. 딜라야 겨우 중우 돈, 겨우 딩기 돈, 겨우 치매 돈 이제 간사한데 대전 숨나. 여치기 요래서로.
Now, in terms of making one's human birth meaningful, and I'm thinking in the context of this future, this life, the future life and then lives beyond. When we start thinking about going beyond thinking of just this life to next life, we start to think of capacities of practitioner and what they're capable of. Here, there are three capacities: initial capacity, middle, and vast. Great.
다 기부 중우디게 먼저 소소 르르 따져로 봐. 르르 따져 르디. 아니 교도도 쓰러. 직도도. 아니 겨다 시로도 신의 와도도 들어. 다들 상당으로. 먼저 신이 시로도 미상은 시로로. 신이 배다 예를 해서나. 가면 요 차로에는 이 뒤버러 와다 내려와. 이 뒤버러 와. 신이 예야 된대 말이에요. 고마 윤투니 누구여래서 낭박이 이제도 지고 낭박지고 말이에요. 줄로 만자게 저 치말라데 켈렌 지고를 와. 다 딩자이나 응마이나 저마질라데 최단데 딩자 modern scientific 된데게 리서치에 콘소 망고 그든다 켈렌게 요르데다 용라게 저 나마 치마 요레세 콘소 랍투고요 말이에요.
Yeah.
이나 콘소게 수수 게르수즈이나 켈렌 친이데 망고요.
망고도.
가르스나 공원에 줄래 겨왕 아마 전예들의 망고도 하다. 어디래다. 그럼 미망고기 겨왕 아마디 전이. 미지라 겨왕 아메 바와다 아마체 겨와디게 바와 아마체. 바와니다 아마니 친여들 여 자가나 여르와.
Yeah.
근데나 아니다. 가서래. 겨왕 아마여나 다 치마 여르다. 제가 다들 상당으로 먼저.
So in that context, the initial capacity practitioner reflects on their body and sees that it is subject to change. It is changing. And then you come to correlate that at the time of death, one has to go somewhere. Is it the case that when you die, you just dissolve to nothing? Question that raises a big point. From a Buddhist perspective, no, one does not go to nothing. There is a continuum. There is a continuum. So, you know, from that, not only Buddhists, but there is this validation of future lives, not just within Buddhism, but within other faiths as well. And then over and above that, even now modern science is starting to realize, although it's not said publicly and, you know, and open, that the possibility of past lives and future lives is there, because there are cases in India of children recalling their past lives' parents and in fact recognizing them. So therefore having two sets of parents, one from the past life and one from this life. So with that type of reasoning, one starts to question.
다 근데 저런저라 근데 망고 tin 껴가마 tinye 껴가지 tinye 근데 토이지로.
Yeah, you guys have probably met, have you not?
음.
Those that have recalled their past lives and or met.
나 껴가마 tinye 스나다. 껴가마 양시 인저 망고베 토르라.
Yeah. So whether you you recall them or not, but you can meet incarnations a lot, isn't it?
나란저 껴가마 양시레스.
We are all incarnations of past lives.
나란저 아니 디 나이나 디 저디 응마 저디 겨가지 이질레는 게 저디 렌라를 말하러 가르치는 건도 미인데 투라 투데 아니 응마 미치 투녀요 말아 투보다 아 대딩 아베 녀만에 망고 투샤로 소리기도 아니 kon 게제시에 나래 감상 파주니가 도군인 거 투고나시
Yeah.
계좌 망고 시에지 되그래 네 파주 지 타니오 차로 그래 소와디 니가로 지고라지 레그래와
Yeah.
그런돌 근데 미망고 투요다 간다로 근데 망고 투요 근데 투요다 디 칸네 중으래와 미 카실레 연구면도 와 카실레 연구도 하대 디 칸네 중으래 말라 디 투요 마 주주가네 투요디 빼망고요 아니 디 지주는 가서데 겨가지 신이지 요디 먼저다 별로 저 미상와 렌데 켈린 겨가지 켈린 저 미만체 겨치말라 tradition이 되냐래 가와이 나래 미제는 상업에 주제 유리마신의 최제 심납상 밀상고 제제데 가서는 겨치말라 야고용야 제대로가 미드 투고 미다 되어야고 차야 그래서 상 밀어 컨트롤말아야 자레 맞아야 누워 맞아야도 겨와 디지고 말이 겨와 망고랑도 뇨르메바 대야 탑시 지게वे인다 이 펜도 시오다가 디 낭베 추 로죠 마체 군네가 겨와가지라 이질레 사선스로 아니 렐레네 아니 네 티와딜레 아 다디 미딩 예망한서 겨와마데 페징에 토보이 통모 인게레 지세나 이제는 게 낭미 인게레로 세상아 더들리기들라디 렌데 그 자와 마체 군네가 렌라 사선스티
So this question, I arrived at the answer myself. I came to the kind of conclusion, when you have the situation where someone that you haven't met before or seen before, but upon meeting them and talking to them, there's such a familiarity. It's like meeting an old friend again. You have that, isn't it? Or you feel really close. And oftentimes it's mutual between you and that one. Have you had this? How is it? How is it that the case that you have that with some beings, but you don't have it with all of them? So definitely in Tibet, this acceptance of past lives is like normal, it's like prevalent and such that we get ready for future lives, thinking that, better get ready, better practice well the Dharma and be kind, because again, we want to be human and connect with humans we've connected with. Therein not to get angry, thinking that you're going to connect with those beings again. So therefore, there's great benefit in that. So I had this kind of intuition even before I met Dharma. In fact, I came to this conclusion before I took robes as a monk.
It seems 97, 87. One Geshe here to retreat. He was maybe 81 years old. One day he went to village and he asked one lady, please give me accommodation. Accommodation. She said, of course, you're welcome. We can make some preparation for your room. He said, no, not now, later. I said, okay, you accept me accommodation, I will come. Not today. And next day, he's passed away. And then a few days later, she got a picnic.
She got pregnant, yeah.
And then the 9 months later was born baby, one boy. When he passed, he speaks, thank you very much, you give me accommodation. Accommodation. This is not my house. My house is the retreat place. And he has a cap. He said, this is my house. Thank you very much. I want to go there, you know. And then we saw this Geshe reincarnation, right?
Yeah.
And he clearly still he remember past life experience. And this family has lots of trees there, lots of trees. And they offer him, our trees offer you, you know, Geshe offer. And they build some build a similar temple like this. And they don't have pillars and pillows, right? Beams, you know, pillars. And we need to buy from Congo. He said, no, I have these trees here. He said he was a young boy, he said. And he told his grandma, you offer me this, isn't it, you know? And grandma said, yes, this is your tree. You know, he passed previous life, his Geshe, they offer him these trees. He still remember those. And I met this person. This reason I believe reincarnation, no question. So,
And my conviction or faith came from that.
다 미수지 경험하지 요만나서 나 이제 지금 말해. 가르라나 띵아라미 통으로 되라.
So if people, you know, kind of say reincarnation does or past lives don't exist, I don't believe that because I've seen a kind of proof of it. Yeah, and also one is checking one's experience, right?
Kalama keda chumo dinde wo jer nge jaw ngama di jaw ya wo shu su yire wa di ngare jaw ngama di jaw ya wo ji langa ya wo ji den sha ting yo da.
And in this life I've met many great beings, many great lamas that have taught me, and I think that's the case that I created the cause, and in the past I have that path, that road to meet them.
제상다 jaw chima yena 아니 다 가와도 그래 와 제와들네 양 미네 밀 제거를 봐 봐. 미네 밀 제월링 그래 다디 저러 와요. 이 말에 당한서 둔둘레 제월링 그래서 미네 둔둘레 제월링 그래서 봐.
And the question is, if there's future lives, where does one go? If you're human, will you necessarily be human again? That's the question that comes up, isn't it? Well, no, humans can be reborn as animals.
And I heard one story. I think your most student knows this story. I talk in this quite often. Some people knew this, but today we need to remember this story, this truth story, right? In China, somewhere one couple, husband passed away, and then he was born pig. He was born pig, and his wife had a dream, in dream, in her dream. And his husband talking, I was born in pig. Please help me. So daddy, so terrible suffering here, you know. And quite often clear lots of dreams. And she's talking, oh, there's so many pigs. How do I know, you know? And he said, you know, such monastery, they have pig farm. I was there. And she said, there are so many pigs. I don't know. And he said, red hand, pig red hand has a human being hand, you know. Human being hand. And she thought this is very unusual. Then she's searching the monastery. Exactly, she found some monastery. And she went to the monastery and asked the monk, do you have pig farm? Yes, we have lots of pig. And do you have something, you know, pig, there's a red hand, some human hand, you know? And this monk said, yeah, we have one very unusual pig. He said, this looks exactly human being. And then she please show me. First, she met this pig jumped for her, you know, recognized. Pig still remember past life, you know. This is the true story. The
purpose behind this is that humans can be born as animals. The story of the purpose of the story.
Tharchin, mine mile jawle na mile phawa jawle na khawa ka sare ta tamya renga.
So from human to human or human to pig, your choice. Which do you think is better?
아니 픽잖아 수가 먹는 날리로.
Yeah, well, if you end up as a pig, you could end up in the supermarket.
제가 내 누구든 영음에서 그러더라.
Yeah, and then once you're in that body, there's that case of suffering with such a body.
미 야가도 알아.
So to be human is preferred.
저는 다 미리 겨울에 거나 딜 이야기 가져와서 됐다. 딜라 겨와치고 그래서다. 와 겨와치 맞다.
Yeah,
말람자 겨와치고 그래서 미국 중 수준 승 그래서 좀 된대. 이송을다. 저는 미리 겨울에 거든 겨와사고 그래서 삼마상 못 채고 그래서 다 되래.
and to that end of again being human, one has to be conduct virtue, give things, be charitable, make aspirations, and as Lord Buddha said, protect from the 10 non-virtues and accumulate 10 virtues. That's how it's done.
개지슈디 삼마상 못 채야 되래도.
Yeah, but even amongst that, what's most important is that we are kind.
삼마상보 유나.
Yep.
디링 초고에 대해 삼마상보이나 디링 님은 이제 기부도 와.
Yeah.
안 디링 기부요나 권다니 기부고도 와. 디링 기부요다 디링 권다니 기부고나 산니 기부도 와.
Yeah.
겨워 치면 다 그러나래. 겨워 치면 산니래. 안저 니 후보에 파도단시래. 파도라도 세대당 겨워 치면 빠르대. 하면 해야게 직사자지요. 다들 파도라 그래라. 위딩레스 지어고.
Having a kind heart depends on waking up and motivating with a kind heart and keeping that throughout the day. And then you'll be happy during the day because you've motivated kindness. And then when you sleep with it, you can wake up and continue the next day and so forth. So really that next day is like future life, isn't it? Tomorrow's like the future life. And then when you sleep at night, that's like the bardo, isn't it? When you go into like an in-between state where you are looking for a next appearance, it is similar.
다도 삼다제 아니 밀레 겨울에면에 야 기부도가 삼다로 다 밀레 기부제 믿어로 강에도
So reflecting again a bit deeper, is it happy being human? Is it happy?
밀레 동해 강에 뭐 쉬지도
Well,
알아요.
humans have so many problems and difficulties and dissatisfactions.
아니 되게 동해디게 아니 동해디게 매우 차요 여러분. 람나 아니 동해디를 타봐서야지 요래서 산제 좀인데 그런 뭐만 안주나 시리와 안주나 시리 아니 제베세체 찬서저 부지 제고 그 빈자체 상만 가도 찍거래 아니 담아들라 수수 상당제 공잡제 동해기 짜와데 단다 힌두도스 동해 군조 소요래서 걸어 아닌데 좀인데 군조 수통을 군조 가와요래서 그때 렌장이라고 하면서 데레면도 동해기 짜와디 간에 중요미디 태가 두고 있어 티와디 렌세가 되는 공잡제 티와디 라라 동해기 짜와디 먼저 미시몽배하고 중시하서로 만나도 미시몽배하고 게 동해 상마 중시하서 미시몽배하고 게 차과던 당 차단사야 돼 중시하서 대왕게 먼저 녀를 상마 중시하서 동해기 짜와단 태와 탈바서야지 독시지 좀 된데 권한라 가봐도 톱 봐. sab시도데 왜세 두마치 두즈다웨 최시 코베니 송어다로 두마치 왜세 고든 타와 시베 냥데게 엠베 두즈나시 주거드메베 디지 타도제 알라 톱송스다 이마다 안졸라 람다 셰르치고 안졸라
So then, in the context of being human and going through difficulties, dissatisfactions, can one make it go away? Does it go away? Is it possible to reach a state where there isn't that dissatisfactions, problems and sufferings in? Well, previously, Buddha was like us and, a normal person like us going through difficulties, but he was in that situation of being a prince, and then he left that situation, he meditated, and he sought to remove the root of dissatisfaction and suffering so that it was vanquished. At that time, the common belief amongst the Hindu meditators was that suffering comes from God. And Shakyamuni Buddha questioned that. If suffering comes from God, where is God? Show me this God. I'll set about to find it. But under analysis and thorough investigation, he came to see that suffering, in fact, came from our own confused mind, our confusion that grasps out of unawareness or ignorance, and from that we have desire, we have aversion, and trouble comes from that. So being free from that, those problems, means cutting the root of suffering and becoming a liberated being. And when Buddha obtained to that state of liberation, he said a verse that I have found something profound, free of elaboration, in the nature of clear light and uncompounded. If I were to teach it, no one would understand, so I will remain silent in the forest. So what Buddha began to show us was the path to that state of clear light and non-compounded nature. This.
다 수수니 타바 짬지게 디그도에서는 다 수술을 가진시에게 다 수술게 자와윤이 디제도 동행냥 되고라다. 안 디제데 아직 동행에 냐먹고 서고도 서로. 디제데 동행을 타버지고도 상당히 다데 수수 타바 짬지 심지신지 동행 태도고 말봐 상당도 봐. 최선 심지 탐제 다 겨워가지 근래도 심지 탐제 수술 앞에 가리시 뭐 수술 자와여서 이런 차담에 심지 탐제 봐. 수술 자와 치슈게 바와 나시나레 세대게 아마이나레 야 보고이나레 조고이나레 고모이나레 야 자와 치슈게 키이나레로 가시 키를 자와 쉽대도로 기다 심이다 아니 로다 네 다 기다 심이랑도 자와 쉽대도 안 대나시 이거 자와 이 자와 대세 동의냥 되고라다 디제디 동의를 줘베 누버드 술로도 상당으로 먼저 대상당보다 샘그 등에서 누가디 술러더스라 단당한저 배전시하게 배샤하게 샘그 등에 세두고도 해라 세두 말해라 저런저 저거 저무지 제제 샘그 등에서 세두 말해 저거 저무 같이 저와 제위나 저런 샘그 등에 자원이네 세두 말해 내가 대지 나오지를 하고사제 저런저 야마 참자를 니마 가셔지 되네 간산질을 저 자르자고 좀으로 당고 참고라제 근데 간사질의 앱사유 experiment 칭자도 되네 argument다 가리자 고죽사로 이 편도면도 제자다 수 여러서도 상제tum나 심지 동에 세두고도 스페나 다자도 메시지도 상제네 로니도 투제도고 단다이나 아주 승이 동에도 동에 세게 탑시 단단 간제 다야데 베자 뒷곰자야도 처바치야도 좀 된대 송전교로 알아. 뉴스chen 제샤 제단에 심지 탐지기 통신 산재고마 도와주세요. 아니 기부 첨부 타바잔 토바드네 기부 딩체 딜라 냠면 쳐야 될라 아니 라고습니다. 디지랑도 냠면 쳐야 되더래. 다 대상 지금에도 기부 첨부 산재고마 도와도 상당히 딜라 기부 첨부 도스chen 상노단단 그 번음지간에 차딘 요래 될
One has to take an approach of an ordered approach through the way you're approaching the spiritual path, a vast ordered approach, step by step. Here, coming back to the notion of whether liberation exists or not. So then you first reflecting on your own liberation from cyclic existence. But that alone would not be enough because it's not just about you. What about all other living beings here and removing their suffering, their plight? Because we talked about the context of past lives and how we are interrelating with others in that framework. And not, whether they are close, whether those beings now or close or far to you, it is the case that at some stage they have been parents, friends, siblings, students, teachers, dogs, close to you in the sense of being affectionate to you. And in the context of these days, even dogs show affections to humans like they're humans. So if the ones that are dear to you have given you such affection in this life, but they're going through difficulties and suffering, then the question comes, who has the potential to help them at this stage? Just those ones in this life that have given you that kindness. Who has the potency to do it? Can you do it? Can you remove their suffering? Well, you might be able to give them a little bit of affection and go, ha ha, hee hee, hoo hoo, and and go and hang with them for a while, and be really friendly. But that can sometimes not go well, and you end up fighting. Or, you end up having disagreements and falling out. But if we look at what Buddha attained for the benefit of all beings, that state of awakening as a Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, then we see that what he attained still remains today from 2,600 years ago. So there's a method whereby you meditate and you get to that result. So here we're talking about the third of our capacities, the great vehicle capacity that your responsibility is to place those beings in Buddhahood. Middle capacity would be just thinking of your own liberation, wherein you practice the 3 higher trainings and understand for truths and terms of what to adopt and what to abandon. But that's only just for middle capacity.
중국되게 먼저 최대기 동해를 되지 겨워지면 둔도 동해를 잡는 미대와 도지기도 요딩되게 미기 동해들의 되네 파코와 거의 동해 탐제를 되와 대상이 지고도 도지기도 텍스도 야 짜베 되는 텍스도 야 짜베 다 대과 전부터 전이 지고 뭐에 선지 탐제기 동해에서야 탑지 제도도 대과 첨보스 대과 첨보가 되는 어디래.
So essentially we're talking about this text being vast vehicle or great vehicle. The word vehicle literally means to lift up, to lift you up, a vehicle to lift you up from suffering. So if we look at those 3 scopes, the first one, initial scope, here we're not just concentrating on this life, but we're thinking of future lives and again being human. So being lifted up from the possibility of not being human. Second scope, here you're mainly concentrating within the framework of securing, yes, another human body, but within that context, still suffering in the cycle of existence. So you want to separate or cut the root of that state of suffering, middle capacity. And then vast capacity, reflecting here, is not just about you, but bringing and placing all beings in that state of Buddhahood as a responsibility, vast scope. So this is why it means great vehicle, to lift all those beings up from that suffering and place them in Buddhahood. Yeah, here remembering mind training, mind, and then train mind.
Dawola da digyung zo menda da tingsan da shibdinde yoro da misodinde yoro dozula chonja segora de galsna paro zo suk dawola sukjing dawo da sumi dawo nisha sukjing dawo sna da ngana zo saja thoni da lungba thoni da susu ki khajong da thoni de la da segro di ba meo so ya ge ne chonja ngoma na di da dungre da tingsan menda da 다 데 팅상데 컴빈 디 텐데다 천제 담다 여러와
bomb
디 나시다 디 숙지게 천제로 다 수미게 단단한 조 다운네데 가르스는 다 단지 당 랑진지 당 되자 시나 콘동하게 마르고도 다운네 되게 다 쪼데 가르스는 다 쪼데 가르스는 이모데 제 마르바레 티 아니 두즈가다 지금 매워서야 기 탑람디jel라 아니 천전난 신기 베콜로 천재기 빼자고 돼 당원에 디 파좀야기 탑람디jel라 아니 천자스 빼자고 세상은 다 디나라 지금 셈기 강에서 셈기 동에 소녀기 되자 콘도 마제 마레와 란진지 당지 도종은 저기 당원에레스 도저 밤에서야기 아니 탑람기 좀 받게 되다
What does the text express then, and why weapon? Why wheel weapon mind training? Well, it says here about the enemy, the wheel weapon that strikes at the enemy's vital spot. What type of enemy are we talking about? There are two, those with form and those without form. And previously, enemies that had form, those enemies that appear to take land and so forth, or snatch land and fight. One would apply a countermeasure with a weapon to stop them. But then there is a level of enemy that is without form. And really, this is what we're talking about here. And the real enemy talked about here is self-grasping, ego-clinging, and selfish interest. So why is it a wheel? Because we are applying this weapon as a countermeasure to mental suffering, the mind sufferings. The enemy of the mind are ego clinging, or timok tenzing, which means confusion which grasps at truly existent self, anger, attachment, self-cherishing, ego clinging, all of that. We have to have a countermeasure to that.
세상 다디 다운네라 베베 천적콜로시 샤와스데 다디 덴주디 민로와 네데 다디 먼저 데려야 디워라 디디네 샤션 아니 단다 먼저 기후 첨부 기후 딩데 다 남베게 최고 그래 뭐 차단으로지 돌디도지 셰사 나라와 다디 먼저 상당단 렘바지 셰나 야고도 상상로 다디
기부 딩단
베나 먼저 교우 친구 교우 등 교우 첨부 상무 단대 찍라 장막 냠리 님도 이제 상무 단계나 나 지난주 망고지 다 최제라 니 산제 공부다 타버더라 땅아 신나지래야 도인 공자가로 근데 상무 단 내가 단단 노멀지 내가 되게 샤로 아니 로저 시리스 코란 쳇다 수수 배셔야고 있나니 되게 와도 대잖아 뒤로 하고 로좀 쳇 타진 되고라 벤저면은 된대시나 누저래 있나 로고치 가보다라 그냥 이런저 타와다 아니려 보잖아 자가다 별로다 가보다 어디서로 별로 가보다 자가난 도시하나 아니 타와다 아니 셰잖아 공배 딜럼 그래 수수 대화 요나시 지야요 말해라 공배게 칸테와디사 아니 강바드즈니 강한테 말에 칼라는 림버테 말에 둘로드즈니 로직 로 듄게고 당그래 되라 둘로 차단직 로 듄게고 당그래 도선 시라요 말에 아니 다갈로절 도선 시라요 말에 타오다 다야 고즈 대화 침부치는 망고 고야라는 아니 다 망고도 미시 칼라니 페레리 둘로니 강바니 엄마한테 대용거를 로전 진행이나 문에 야고요. 다 틀린 시도 말하시나 저. 그래서 저제고를 내가 지고를 뒤도 내가 집에 나가려고 단다 쳐야 된대. 지당 그런 거 뒤도 쉐비나 대 저는 편도 셔.
So then this is the title of the text. Wheel, weapon that strikes at the enemy's vital spot. Meaning removing the ignorance or ego clinging we talked about. But before we get on to that, it is good to understand the various scopes that we've just been through and be able to practice the path and apply the practice to the path with those three scopes in mind. Because if we don't, there's a danger that some people, when they first meet the Buddha Dharma, they just think, oh, I'll just go off to the forest and meditate straight away. That doesn't always work. Or that you'll go to India and become a monk or a nun, a renunciate. But that doesn't always work either, coming from our culture, going into a different culture because you need certain things. Okay, so if you're financially sound, you could perhaps do it and go over to South India or whatever, become a monk or a nun, because in that context, for 7 or 8 years, you don't need a lot of clothes, your food's taken care of. But then the question comes, can you really do that? Are you at a level where you can do that? So what I think is useful is we approach the text in the context of, okay, so we need to work, we need to be in society. How do we apply the Dharma in that living situation?
제자한테 나라게 아니 semje 신라야다 편모주야기 내가 제도 산제지고마 타도게 되지 더 제고도 서와 아니 타도게 되지 더 제발라 코와 방구도 서와 코와들 착바 제면도스 코와 방바 제발라 아니 미르된데 다 단라다 지도고도 서와 미르된데라 최제고도 지상에 미르된데 다고야고 싶어와 난 그러나서 류제자레 클라스야레 두도 공공자레 semba도 양고제 야야도 계좀 그거 디 semba 당보였나 류되어도 semba 당보면은 류 칼라사니 마드 아니 류제제니 마드 아니 녀도차 아니 수보도 내나도 리도 제가 디인주 당에 류드 당고자야디 심지신라 편보도야시 등 내가 야고제 지야시 등 류드 당고야고 자기 대체도 당아 내가 지기 있어와 내가 지금 배셔 서울하다 방바 대고를 뭐로 땅고를 넘로고를 칼라사고를 그래서 류드 초고로 류드 초네 아니 얘다 투주 요리메시네 로정체 최체 삼성부치 어떤 데시 지금 삼다샤나 최 다라네 최 아니 밀러 뭐스 펜도시아 그거도는 펜도시가 아니 펜도시마도는 밀러네와 마제오체 밀러 녀로 마세오체가 네 어디래다 최 당보에 가져서디 최 되네셔고로 만들어 좋아는.
So then in the context of that life, we want to have this thought to benefit others. If you approach your job, your daily living, with the motivation that you want to benefit others, so I will work to place others in the state of Buddhahood or final bliss. But then to do that, going back a step, you have to get out of the cycle or unenlightened cycle of birth and death, samsara, or not, let's say, lessen the attachment to the things of this life and then get out of samsara. And even a step back, to do that, you need to be human. You need a human basis. Just preserving the human support on that level, what do you need? You need to eat well, exercise, have a healthy, positive mind. Because when the mind is clear, the body is good. And if the mind's unclear and drowsy, then the health can be affected. You can feel dull and so forth. So you can think as you go to do your job, I will do my work to sustain my body. And in that light, I need a house, I need a car, I need to eat to sustain my body so that I can study the Dharma and help beings. That is Dharma. That's the essence of it. And then over and above that, if you can't help other beings, at least do not harm them.
아니 소왕을 그나마 펜도 제 그거 여러 저런 들어. 아니야 펜도 땅아 펜도 지기 인세제야 베디 비조 내단은 마다와시지 망보직 전에야 비조 자성 못 차로다. 이제 말도 yan데 셰럽 거로 셰럽스니 되면은 야 펜도지 파셔야죠. 코베 선바 두셔야 되는데 차기도 하셔요.
Yeah, so then in your life, in the context of this life, you have the opportunities to help others a lot, but it has to be done skillfully, checking how to help, because there's a danger that if we try and help others, it can kind of morph and it can make it worse because you upset them. Here is where you need wisdom. Without wisdom, you can't really help others.
어디치다 말한저 초wak나라 사실 최제스도 아니 검잡스도 밑좀 가가대들 그 검자디 소소스 류당아 텐시된야 들어와다 좋아 텐시된제 당에 Mila Pendo Chewa, Lega Chewa, the
yeah.
Pendo Dudo, never Jeva Dudo, Taji Shedra. Pendo Duduna, or Mans Shere, never Jev, then Mandiwa Chagadona, and Milnova Jigadona, and for the
There's
collector,
no one.
New Dana,
Mm.
Jolanda, and the young Chadi, New Dana, Yunding Chadi, Mardani. A day that's mother Chidonan, then Chidura. Hashemish Rigan de Kaga Dena, so Gomtora. Also meet a meeting, any days. Madi Goyme, Tatar, Yanent that the Yammer, me tick there to the Lanam Condosaji.
Yeah.
Oh, Lamsan took Doda. They got Canapingra, Rigan, Pagade, Condolani Manada, Tamla, Yawu de Gura. 오늘 건드라니 강이 유배 내가 들라 동네 지도미디 오늘 다 바오라 하래다 바오네 되다 로
Hero. So some people think that to practice Dharma in this life is just to sit quietly with your eyes closed and meditate, but actually watching the actions of one's body and mind here and recalling them, conscientiousness. Are they benefiting others or harming others, those actions? And under that initial intention, reducing harmful actions and increasing beneficial ones, something we can do in society. That is something we can do. Rather that, if we just go to an isolated place, to a hill, whatever, and meditate, and meet no one, and stay isolated. But then when we do meet them, you start getting all kind of pushy, saying, I want 1, 2, and 3. Or they say something slightly wrong and immediately you get angry. Well, anyone can stay isolated and do that. But the person who comes out of retreat and meets someone that is quite antagonistic, but is really relaxed and is able to, what's the word, forbear, to be patient, that's a real hero or heroine. That second one.
어디 말하면서 그 틱 뉴뉴지 아니 무슨 메제나라 삼로 단계에는 아니 메제 교화던 그래서
Yeah, so in context of Dharma, very pithy small words, but has meaning in the context of life.
계시주디 sembasam무셔야돼 다 계신부 쇼지래로
Yeah, so of course, of utmost importance is being a warm-hearted person, kind.
예 아니 건조 전조 르링 요래 건조 계시셔야 말아 게 르링이 이나 결혼도 받을 계시죠 좀 계시 좋아요 좋아
Geshe says, with regards to discussion group, we can make it ourselves, but do you have any questions now?
online build
Yes.
처음엔 되셔요.
If not, then dedicate here.
Page 31.
난다 젠라 제바 대시 나바 팀는 조제 제와 노산 템베 자메 사스문지 저비사다도 요지 오라란 헤밀네 바이
Due to the merit of the first actions, my pretty I did it every morning to with the dedication on rights of the best. But I did first one so long 3 times. Because I didn't want self-esteem. Anything that down, some out this way down, practice orange. Many of the others are obstacles intensified and then all the use of certain intensity. The word round in which will bring door, or the single benefit. Apparently, in yes or on the siege. May all the holy wishes be spontaneous and fulfilled. And then teachings and identify greater beings. The message should be clear the power of the unification of distant perfection. The Lord holding him to gaps or the siege. May all the holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You are all the subduers far away. Deserves the gospel bearable. The Spain preserving and spreading much in our victorious doctrine. The mastery acknowledging magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Save myself and doubles your disciples, please, slowly return. For our land, the connections of myself and others many times. May the vision of the copper and drop our place for a long time. And on the first page, I'm with the prayer. Hail, Caesar, assembly of the children of the victorious one, extravagant and particular words. Victorious no ten province, sons alone, the lineage masters. All the objects of refuge in infinite lands, the place bestowing the virtue and fruits of accomplishing the spread of the earth now. Or spreading the one expresses and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you warn the art of patience that is never stars, and comparable and will grow to your likeness. Lord God, and single pointedly for the sake of victorious one's teachings, the soul gave way to the joy, benefit, and happiness that merged. And all other living beings who examining how to face what the great things. Nevertheless, through the unceasing truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of body shoot out the children of victorious ones, by the smile of reincarnation shortly be the glory of torture this time.